Thank you very much, Mr. Molinari. I really appreciate the invitation from Ambrosetti Forum. I mean, it's not the first time I had the opportunity and privilege to talk to the Ambrosetti Forum, and I also would like to thank Emma, Claudio, and Carlo for excellent introductory remarks, which kind of forced me to depart from what been my prepared remarks. But I think it would be more interesting just to react to some of the very important statements which have been there, and also to appreciate to highlight my appreciation for the close collaboration we have with Italy, with Italian stakeholders and with the Italian partners, not only in the issue of energy security, but overall modernization of European economy through the transition to the low-carbon energy, and especially for the strong Italian support for United European Project, strong support for the Energy Union project, which is very crucial, and I will tell you where we are and how important the Italian support would be in the coming months. When I was here the last time, I wrote the blog with the name "All Roads Lead to Rome." And I know that it's old saying, but if it comes to the current situation in Europe and the Energy Union project, I think it's very true, because Italy has very important role to play. You have a strategic location. You are a strategic partner for many of the European countries, and your companies are playing a very leading role on the European market. You are very crucial partner for all the neighboring countries in Mediterranean, and you are a very important partner for many African countries, and I will come to that in a moment, a little bit elaborate on the previous remarks. And at the same time, also you are doing a lot in putting the emphasis on how this energy transition, which I think it's inevitable, should be linked with economy modernization. I think the minister's calendar focus on the Italy 4.0, on the digitization of our economy, on all that modernization we need in Europe, which is highlighting how all this is interconnected, interlinked, and how we try to reflect it also in our concept of energy union. That when we're talking about the energy, it's not the energy only, it's climate policies, it's our efforts in the transport sector, the important strides we make in increasing the energy efficiency in all areas of our economy, and of course the focus on the research and innovation, which would be crucial to get some of the breakthrough technologies which we still have in our labs into the market and to use them better for the future. I think especially the Italian efforts in a smart grid rollout, in testing these new digitized models, how to distribute the energies, are, I think, very important indicators how this technology could be used on wider scale across Europe. And then we spoke with Carlo just minutes before we started our meeting on the importance of the smart cities concept. I think here again, if you look at the developments in Torino, and I'm sure in many other cities in Italy, it's quite clear that cities should be, I would say, such a connecting links between our efforts on European and national level to transform our economies, because that change is very often happening in the cities, because this is where almost 80% of European is living. This is where we have industry located. This is where we are suffering from traffic jams, so where we are trying to get more and more of a clean environment through the investment into the new modern public transport, and I can go on and on and on. So they are very important allies, and it's very good that mayors are so active and want to be part of this very important transition which is taking place right now. And of course, Italy is a home to many very important think tanks like the Ambrosetti Forum and like other institutes which are bringing very important ideas, helping us to open the debate with the stakeholders, with the political thinkers about how to move the Europe forward. And this is what I appreciate a lot, always coming to Italy, that you have that strong pro-European spirit which help us to go through what currently are very turbulent times in Europe. The last Friday I was in Bratislava, We had the summit of the leaders in this new format in 27. I think it was quite clear that we regret the British decision to leave. But at the same time, what was, I think, very important in the discussion in Bratislava was that the leaders got a reserved time for very open and frank discussion. And of course, we have so many things to debate in Europe that you cannot solve everything in one day. But what is important to demonstrate the will, which I think was very clear, demonstrated in Bratislava, and that was the will that we are ready to go in 27 and we are ready to make the best out of the European project. As I think Mr. Tusk has said, we have a lot of problems in Europe, but Europe is the best what we have right now, and therefore we need to focus on our strength, on things which are uniting us, and on the areas where we definitely can get out of the European Commission much more than when we try to perceive our goals individually. And I think if it comes to energy and climate areas, this is a clear proof that the European value added, it's undisputed here. There is strong support from the citizens for the concept of this united European approach. More than 70% of Europeans supports the Energy Union project, and I'm very glad that I always find very cooperative interlocutors here in Italy. So some of the major trends which already been reflected in the previous remarks. The first one, of course, is a climate action. I totally agree with Emma, Claudio, and Carlo that finally, as a global community, we are getting our act together, because for many years, Europe was such a lonely fighter against the climate change, and now we managed to convince the major polluters, our major international partners and competitors at the same time, to tackle the climate change together. So I think that the agreement from Paris was very significant from this point of view, that now we would have a global community acting together. And we have seen the reflection of that in the fact that the United States and China already ratified this agreement. We believe that it should be now up to Europe really to trigger this Europe into action. We hope that Italy will be able to help us to get this done as quickly as possible, because we've been shaping these policies for years, and I think we should definitely be at the table when the global community will start to discuss how to implement this very important agreement for the future. I think that this global effort to tackle the climate change is bringing, of course, a lot of new opportunities and a lot of new challenges. I think Emma and Claudio, they know very well how the business models are changed. Almost every company has to change their business model, not only because of this energy transition, but I would say because of the globalization, because of the digitalization of our lives, and because of, I would say, this new consumer where we have on the market, where the people wants to be more in charge, what they buy, what they can produce themselves, and they want to be much more active in developing the options as the consumers. And this is here clearly to stay. On top of it, we have the new millennials who are much more conscious about the environment, who are more ready to share, who are prepared for this new business model, where the service would be probably more important than the ownership of the thing. And that's something which is, of course, affecting, I would say, almost all companies which are in the area of goods production. So we see this disruption of the business model, and I understand that now the industries and also I would say, people, the workers go through a lot of challenges. And part of the current, I would say, the bad mood we have in Europe, but I mean, it's the same in the States, it's the same in many countries in the world, is that so far, we as a democracies didn't find, I would say, the proper response how to respond to these insecurities which have been brought by the globalization. Insecurity of, from one day into another, everybody suddenly appeared on the global market. every company, every SME, every young student is now competing really with many other people from, I would say, all corners of the world. European industry was never in the situation, as we have realized with our steel sector, that from 1 month into another, almost all the production of European steel could be replaced by the steel from China. And I think we just need to develop our instrument to be much prompt, much more efficient, much faster to react to these challenges, to be able not only to be competitive, but also to defend ourselves when we see that the competition is not the fair one. And then, of course, that was the insecurity of, I would say, in a classical sense, looking what's happening in our neighborhood, how destabilized the world is in the Middle East, in the Northern Africa, and of course how we are learning, still, I have to say, learning how to cope with the migration crisis. So these are all things which present the political challenge, which make the people anxious about the future, and therefore I think we need to offer the answers to all these anxieties from the European, from the national level. And I totally agree with Carlo. What is extremely important is that we would try to pass the same message as much as possible, so that people are not confused that Europe is pushing in one direction, national governments in third direction, and the mayor of the local city in the third direction. I think in democracy we have to discuss, we have to debate, but if it comes to the strategic choices, if it comes to the, I would say, the important political decisions, we need to be aware that our citizens would like to see that we, as a Europe, as Italy, as in my country, Slovakia, that we have a plan, we know how to tackle these things, and we can offer the solutions. And therefore I think that summit in Bratislava was so important, that our leaders realized that Europe is very important, but at the same time European Union is very fragile, and we need to make sure that we would strengthen the strong points, overcome the divisive lines, and work much more on that political consensus on the crucial questions we have to face in Europe. At the same time, if it comes to the climate change and the energy transition, I think that, as Carlo and Emma has said, we've been the pioneers. So we started this very important process. I think we realized the first one how important it is. And yes, we've made a mistake. I think if you look at our ETS, technically it's perfect. The Chinese are going to introduce something similar for themselves in very near future. But if you look at the current carbon price, it's definitely not driving the innovation. And unfortunately, I marked down the figures Claudio mentioned, which are quite striking. That 1% of coal is destroying the 10% of the renewables potential, and that's something what we need to, of course, work on very much in the future. As you know, we presented the new ETS proposal for post-2020. We introduced this new market stability reserve, which would remove from the market these 800 million allowances. We'll see if this would be enough, if we shouldn't explore other options and learn from other continents or countries where the ETS is producing better results. And I'm also saying this already for some time, we should think how we can introduce, of course gradually, with all the precautions, the system which would be globally fair. If the China is going on the ETS, now all the Canadian provinces are deciding that they would go in the same way. The ETS is working in South Korea. There are quite a few states from the United States which are having the similar system. So I think we should try to think what can we do for the future with all the precautions, taking into case all the legal and environmental concerns, how to set up gradually the system which would be a global setter for the carbon price. Because I think that would be fair for the industry. We would avoid all the worries we have with unfair competition, with the carbon leakage, and that would also be very, very clear signal that what we are trying to do here is really the global movement towards the low carbon economy. I think in this effort, Europe has the first mover advantage. Despite of all the flaws which we discussed a minute ago, we really are the first major economy which managed to grow by 46% since 1990, and at the same time decrease our greenhouse gas emission by 24%. It could be done even more if we wouldn't make some of these mistakes, but nobody did it like us. So therefore, I think we have to really use all that knowledge we gathered, all that experience, positive, negative, all the technologies we developed and offered it to our partners, be it in Middle East, in Africa, so they can jump over this very difficult phase through which the current industrial world went through. Claudio was very eloquently speaking about the situation in Africa, about the lack of access to electricity, and how damaging this is for the perspective of the local economies, especially on African continent. And I visited quite a few African countries, and I totally agree with him. If you do not have electricity, you do not have proper education, you cannot have a proper water waste management, and simply you are really not able to develop your country, the personal lives of the people living there. And therefore, I think this should be one of the key priorities for our future cooperation. We just announced that we would like to copy a little bit the experience from the Juncker Investment Fund from Europe, and create something similar mostly for Africa. It could be up to the 44 billion of euros, and I already discussed it with our commissioner responsible for development aid, Neven Mimica, how we can channel it to these new future-oriented technologies, how we can combine these low-carbon technologies, how we can explore the needed energy sources, how we can deploy the smart solar technologies, which would uplift the situation in those countries, develop the new economic models, and make it much more hopeful for the local residents that the future could be in their countries, that they can develop their business models, they can develop their personal lives in these countries, and that would be, I think, very welcome contribution to the stabilization of the situation of African continent, and I think it would help us to tackle also the refugee crisis, which is very often driven not only by the war like Syria, but especially by the very difficult economic situation of the people living in many African countries. Very often when you talk about the low-carbon economy, we are talking about the growth and job potentials. I think here, again, we have to say that despite the terrible economic crisis we went through in Europe a few years ago, one of the few industries which was growing was actually the green tech, clean tech industry. Currently, we have like 9 million people working in this industry in Europe only. There is assessment that by 2030, if we would follow our goals, which we set ourselves in Paris, this would double to at least 18 million people. So it's clear demonstration that if we set our policies right, if we really do the right thing, that also this low carbon transition can become the gold mine for jobs of the future, jobs which would be very important for Europe, and which I believe we can use also for exporting of all these new technologies to the outside world. I would like to thank Claudio and Carlo for very clear words on energy security, gas explorations, and the LNG. I think that one of the moments which really triggered the European action and decision of the leaders on the energy union been crisis with the gas supplies we had in Europe, be it 2006, be it 2009, when we suddenly realized how vulnerable we are, that how the whole economy of the whole countries had to be completely stopped because you had to channel the remaining heat and electricity you had to the households and the hospitals. And it was quite clear that we do not want to have the repetition of this anymore in Europe. Therefore, we invested so much into the contingency planning, into the stress test, and into the diversification of the sources, because if it comes to the gas, it's quite clear that this would be very important transitional fuel for future developments in Europe, that it's very important fuel for matching the intermittent sources of the renewables which we are deploying across the Europe, and therefore we would like to make sure that we get the supplies from different directions. We estimate that by 2030 we would need roughly as much gas as today, between 380 to 450 billion cubic meters, because we believe that more and more coal power generations would be phased out. We see that more and more countries is going in that road. There is increasingly intense debate on phasing out the environmentally harmful subsidies, be it at the G20 or G7 level. We expect that more gas would be used in a cleaner transport, be it buses, trucks, or ships. And we know that the domestic production, indigenous production in Europe is going down. So we clearly need to diversify our sources. I mean, we are working very hard to make sure that we would see the Caspian gas in Italy before 2020. That's also one of the projects which we are going to discuss with Carlo in the afternoon. I am very hopeful about the development in the Eastern Mediterranean, when this new gas reserve which has been discovered could be very important for the development of the region of the East Med. I was in Cyprus, and I know that how big hopes they have for these new developments there. I know how important it is for Egypt, but when we look at the size of these new fields, I believe that it could be a very important source, additional source to secure higher energy security for Europe. So let's think how we can do it, how we can actually use this asset which we have in the East Med, the strong, I would say, diplomatic and business presence of Italy in this region, to help us to develop this source for the benefit of the region and of the Europe. And then, of course, that African aspect of this discussion is also very, very important, because this could be the mutually beneficial endeavor. How we can develop the local economies, help them to jump over that difficult fossil part that Europe went through, and at the same time have additional sources to diversify and to consolidate our energy security. We are working, as you know, very hard on our LNG strategy. We have quite big potential and capacities in Europe. Our problem is that our LNG terminals are not well interconnected. So we have big capacities, but we lack interconnections. And this is exactly what we are trying to achieve, be it on Iberian Peninsula, be it in Western Balkans. This is what we do in northern part of Europe, in Baltic countries, in Poland, because we believe that with the big arrival of LNG in the coming 5 years, we should really declare that we are open for the business. We want to see the fair competition, and we want to benefit from that new source of energy which is appearing on the global market. If you allow me one word on what is very important, especially for Central and Eastern Europe, this is the relationship between Ukraine and Russia. I was in Ukraine a couple of days ago. I was quite encouraged by the reforms they are undertaking, unbundling of the Naftogaz, the reforms related to the independence of the regulator, new electricity market, strong focus on the energy efficiency in this country. Of course, politically it's not that easy, so we see how difficult it is to get through the parliament, but at the same time I saw very strong commitment from the top leadership that this would be done, and it was very clear from the point of view of European Commission, international financial institutions, that all these reforms are absolutely key for release of additional tranches of financial support, be it macro financial assistance from the Commission, 600 million euros, be it the loan for purchase of gas from the World Bank, $500 million, or be it the support from the EBRD, which is still, I would say, half of the 300 million of revolving loan of million of dollars. So there is very strong financial support for the reforms and for what I hope I will be able to discuss in Moscow in the coming weeks on how to make sure that we would have a safe transit for the next winter. I believe that the best way would be to proceed as we did in the last 2 winters, to have a very clear protocol which is clarifying some of the issues which are important from the both sides. And then I hope that we'll be also able to discuss the post-2019 future of the gas transit through Ukraine, because we believe that it's of strategic importance for Europe. It's very important for the reform process in Ukraine, and I hope that we will be able to have the constructive discussion on these issues. If you allow me, the last point which Carlo was referring to, and this is regionalization. We realize that if it comes to the contingency plans for gas emergencies, if it comes to the more, I would say, efficient management of our electricity flows, what we discovered after talking to the member states, that of course they know their neighbors very well. They like to cooperate with them. They usually know how well or badly they are interconnected with the neighbors. And therefore we believe that before jumping with everything on the European level, we should proceed through this well-established regional cooperation, be it for the gas contingencies, be it for the electricity cooperation in the future. And this is what you will find in the proposals we would be putting on the table in the future. What is expecting from the European Commission between now and December? I promise that this would be the year of delivery for the Energy Union. I hope that in December I will be able to say, if it comes to the legislative proposal, that the mission is accomplished, because everything what we listed in the action plan will be on the table by December. New electricity market design, new renewed directive on renewables, new decision on how the ACER, Agency for Cooperation of Energy Regulators, new analysis on the energy prices in Europe, and the new energy efficiency package which we want to present in the coming weeks, as well as the strategy for support of research and innovation in the field of energy. All this is being prepared for this semester, and I hope that by this we would start the new process. We have now the global agreement in the form of Paris Agreement. I hope that by the end of the year we can tell you what we propose as a new European framework, and then I would need the support of the all stakeholders and such a constructive governments like the Italian one to start to work on national energy and climate plans. Because what we hear from the investor is, look, I mean, we see the global understanding. Now we see that there is the European frame being formed, but to believe, to invest, and to be sure that this is really the direction of the future, we also need very strong governmental decision. We need that all these lines are going in the same direction, that there is this common approach, common effort, and then we are ready to invest. And you know, when you talk to pension funds, to the green bankers, to financial sectors, there's actually a lot of investment waiting to be disbursed, to be channeled into this new direction. But what is needed is reassurance from global, European and national levels to make sure that this is a tendency we are going to support all together. We want to support it, and this is the last word, by our risk-sharing facility. We had quite a big success with the first year of the Juncker investment plan. We managed to mobilize 116 billion in less than a year. for projects in the field of energy infrastructure. We are going to double that fund. We want to dispense around 500 billion euros until 2020, most of it in the field of energy efficiency, energy infrastructure, and energy transition. And for that, we need the good project. So, if you allow me to conclude by thanking all of you for being ready to debate these very important issues. I'd like to thank Italy for very constructive support of the Energy Union project, Emma for doing such a great job with Business of Europe, and Claudio for very important insights we're always getting when we talk about the energy security issues, and of course to Ambrosetti Forum for keeping us together and putting very important topics on the table. Thank you very much.